Now let's talk about the JSON file that we need to provide to the post method when we are submitting a new job. So if we were using AutoUpgrade, using the binaries, using the jar file, then we will provide a config file like this. Take this as an example. If you want to create a JSON file for the REST API, the structure is pretty the same. The only difference that instead of using the variable pair method, we use a JSON structure for it with the attributes and their values. So for example, for the global variables here, we have a global section in our JSON. And for a given global parameter, we have the attribute here inside the global section in the JSON file. Now, for the database local parameters, we also have a jobs structure in the JSON file where it's a vector. And for each entry of the vector, we specify the parameters for a given job. So if we had, let's say, in the config file, a UPG2 entry, then we would have another structure of this vector here. We would have a comma in the end, and then we would start another vector with the same entries. Now let's talk about the REST API methods and endpoints we have. So we have the test endpoint, which is the main one. This one is that we start with posting, meaning creating a new task. So the post method for the task endpoint is when we submit a new job for our AutoUpgrade task. The get for task means that we want to get the status of a job that's running in AutoUpgrade. The tests, the second endpoint we see here, tests, is the only one that we don't need to provide anything to it. When we run a get against this endpoint, we are going to get the list of all AutoUpgrade tests that we have in our system. The status, progress, console, and log, for those 4 endpoints here, we need to provide which task we want to get the status or which task we want to get the progress, the console output, or the log files. So for these 4 endpoints here, we need to provide the task ID. And the task ID is given to us when we post. So in the first method here, when we post a new job for our AutoUpgrade. So first, again, we use the task endpoint to create a new AutoUpgrade task. Then we get this task to use on the status, progress, console, or log endpoints. So for example, here, I'm running a post method, which is equal to running AutoUpgrade.jar minus config mode analyze. Here we see that in the endpoint, I'm putting mode equal to analyze. So let's understand all the entries we have here in this curl call. -k first is to ignore the verification of the certificate, because usually when we create a REST web service in our server, we use a self-signed certificate. So this -k is just not throw an error and ignore this certificate because it's a self-signed certificate. -data binary is the input JSON that we are providing to this post method. Here is what method we are using. For this, we are using the post one. And header, we are specifying that the input file we are providing, which is in binary, is actually a JSON file. And finally, the endpoint. Here, we are running against the task endpoint using the post method and also using the mode analyze, meaning we are creating a new job in the analyze mode. So the output is like this. And we can see that in this output, we have the task ID. And this is like a PK for this task, which we will use in all the other endpoints to get the status or to get the progress and also the log files of a given task. So we note down this number. And now let's say, for example, I want to get the list of all the tasks. So here I also have here the task ID for all the tasks in this case, not only the one that I submitted. So now let's go on the test endpoint, but using not the post method. Here, I'm omitting the method. I don't have -x get, because when I don't specify anything, by default, it's the get method. So here I'm getting a specific test status. And here I get the result. And you see here status finished, meaning that my analyze mode is done. Also, I can get the console output for a given job. So again, I provide the task ID, I use the console endpoint, and this is the output I would have if I was running AutoUpgrade in connecting our system using the Java call. So there in the console, I will see something like this. So this is simply the output of our AutoUpgrade job if you want to see it in text mode. And here we see that the job finished without any failure. Now what I'm doing is I'm running a post method again against the task, meaning I'm submitting another job. But here I'm not giving the JSON file. I'm just providing the task ID, meaning I'm resubmitting that task that I already had, but now using the mode deploy, no longer the mode analyze, meaning first time I analyzed my AutoUpgrade task, and now I'm deploying it. So I don't need to provide the same JSON again. I'm just reusing the same task ID, now using a new mode, which is the deploy mode. And here you will see the status, this job was submitted. And now if I want to get the log, all the files that we're creating during this execution, I can go against the log endpoint, providing my task ID. And here I have the list of the files that are created during this job execution. And what I can do is I can copy this URL here for a given file name that I want to check. And I can efficiently open a web browser and paste this link. And then I will be able to see the HTML file doing a REST call using the browser. So that's the same as using curl, but here the browser is translating the HTML output in a visual form for me. So here, for example, I can check the status of my AutoUpgrade task.